GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hi, this is Jeffrey Weissman. You might know me from all sorts of films and TV shows. Pale Rider, Twilight Zone, Back to the Future 2 and 3, Saved by the Bell. I don't know what you know me from, but know me now from All Bets Are Off with Robbie Vegas.
What's up, rock soldiers, and welcome back to the All Bets Are Off podcast. I'm your host, as always, the rock star Robbie Vegas, and today my guest is Gregory Iron. So the intention of this podcast was to talk to Gregory about his career in wrestling and just all about wrestling in general, and we went off on so many tangents, and I loved every second of it. So I truly hope that you guys love this podcast as much as I did, and we are going to do a part 2 because we could just talk forever about so many different things, and I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface yet. So, for now, check this out, and before you do, don't forget to follow ABAO Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and X, and, I try to be as interactive as possible on those things. I'm really pushing the social media now for ABAO, so if you could help me out, that'd be great, and also leave us a review and a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. So let's get to this interview. All right, Greg, the first thing I want to do is just thank you for being here on the All Bets Are Off podcast, man. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to set this up for a while, and I'm glad we can make it happen.
Yeah, I almost kind of lost track of how long we've been trying to figure this out. I was really thinking about it. I wanted to bring it up, and I was like, I don't know.
It's been months and months.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to start by first bringing up, all right, I don't want to go right into the F-bombs yet, but I'm going to have to. What a fucking main event that you and Bill Collier just had at ESW Tough Luck.
Thanks, man. I was really proud of that match. If it wasn't the best match I've ever had, it's in my top 3 for sure. Like, Bill is kind of a jerk, as you can see, but also he's incredibly talented at being a jerk and as a wrestler. And I've been saying for years that, there are certain guys that you work with in our business that bring you up to a level that you don't even know you're capable of. And when I list it to people that know names in wrestling, I'll go Johnny Gargano and Matt Cross and Josh Alexander and Silas Young and Bill Collier. And then they always go, who is that last one? And it always upsets me because, and obviously thinking back to when Bill was less of a dickbag, I've known him for a long time, but, Bill is incredibly underrated as a professional wrestler. And I don't know what he did in a past life or in this life that he has never been signed to a contract. But it's baffling to me because he has all the tools necessary to be making millions and millions of dollars. The fact that he continues to bless us with his presence on the independents is great, but I really wish the world could see what Bill Collier is capable of.
Well, I 100% agree with that. But I want to add to that. I feel the same way about you yourself. And that main event happened the way that it happened because of both of you. And I was standing behind the curtain through the whole match. And I was just amazed the entire time. Like you had me hanging on every kick out, I was like, oh my God.
That means a lot. Thank you. I've been placed into a lot of roles over the years as a performer, and I feel like any situation that you put me in, I'm going to try my best to make it work. But I think the position that I'm least often put in is that of a guy who could be in the main event. And I think because of my stature, because of my overall size, because of my disability, wrestling with cerebral palsy, I think people tend to forget that over the years, over the last geez, in July, it's going on 18 years.
Oh, wow.
I've wrestled some of the top wrestlers in the world, and I've kept up with them. A lot of the people that you're seeing today in AEW and WWE, I've stood across the ring from them. I stood next to them in the ring, and I think the last couple of months at ESW, I think it's reminded a lot of people that I can go toe to toe with the best, and that's not even me being cocky because I'm my own biggest critic, but and I have a hard time going back and looking back at my own work. But I can honestly say I went back immediately and watched the last two matches with Bill, picked them apart. I'm always going to pick them apart, pick out the little things that I could do better, but in general. I'm very, very proud of the last couple of matches I've had with Bill Collar. So thank you for the praise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want any listeners of the All Bets Are Off podcast who haven't seen it to go on IWTV and watch the last two, like you said, but especially the one at that Tough Luck back in, I think it was March 16th or 15th or something like that. So definitely check that out, guys. Now, you mentioned that you've been doing this for 18 years. So let's take it back 18 years ago and beyond. Where does wrestling start for you?
I first found wrestling through my grandmother, who was a big Hulk Hogan fan. It turns out as I started to get a little bit older, I realized that she was a fan long before we started watching the WWF together. Like, she had VHS tapes of AWA stuff and NWA stuff. So it went really beyond the fandom in which I thought she had. And, she showed me Hulk Hogan around WrestleMania 6. We watched WrestleMania 6, and it's strange that I even remember that, because WrestleMania 6, I would have been like 3.5 years old. So my brain is like weird when it comes to remembering little stuff from when I was a little kid, probably things that don't even make sense to remember. But the most important thing is that I remember the first time I saw wrestling in WrestleMania 6, and after the Ultimate Challenge, I was pretty much hooked after that. And so, I just got caught up in those larger than life characters, and I was a big babyface supporter. Anybody that was a good guy, even if they were a bad guy the previous week, if you told me that that's the guy I'm cheering for him. And so, basically a WWF kid until my favorite Hulk Hogan went to WCW in 1994. And I lost my grandma to bone cancer in 95. And I think when that happened, because it was something that we bonded over, I think I latched onto wrestling even more. It was like my escape. And growing up, not only as a kid with cerebral palsy, but a kid that was in a broken home, my grandma was my best friend. She was sort of my protector when things around me were all messed up in my household. And I think when she was gone, I think I had to lean on Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio and all those characters to be my best friends. So it was everything for me growing up.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. So you said that happened in 95 and you latched onto wrestling more. So was it like a thing in your mind almost immediately, like, I'm going to do this someday? Like, it was just,
Well, I guess when you're a kid, in my situation particularly, I didn't know if it was realistic to be a wrestler, because I'm getting bullied at school and people are making fun of me for my disability. And I don't know, like, you don't walk around hearing people say that they're pro wrestlers for a living. So you don't really know even how you go about doing it. But as I started to get older and started to get smarter to the inner workings of wrestling and reading more Pro Wrestling Illustrated and things like that, I started to realize that there's guys that write this show, and there's obviously commentators on the show. And so I started to think, well, how do I do that? And, I started looking into like maybe going to college for communications. And I always enjoyed writing growing up. That was one of my passions too, being a kid who, just watched wrestling all day long and cartoons and read comic books and didn't have many friends. Like I kind of had an active imagination. So like I would just write all the time and draw pictures. And so I thought, well, maybe this is a realistic thing that a guy with one functioning hand could do. And so I started memorizing wrestling statistics, because I thought that's what announcers do, commentators do. They don't have paper in front of them. They have to just know this stuff. And so I just know the most pointless WWF and WCW facts that you could ever imagine. And then at some point, I see Zach Allen in 2003 on WWF television. He's wrestling with one leg. And when he moonsaulted in the Big Show, that was the first time that I thought to myself, I saw myself in someone. You know what I mean? Like I think like particularly like when you're a kid and you see someone that has something that you can relate to, or you often hear it like because when we were growing up, African American wrestlers and luchadors, Latino wrestlers wasn't as big of a deal as they probably should have been. But once these kids are seeing adults doing this that look like them, like you see something in yourself that's possible. And I think that's what I saw with Zach Allen. It's like, I'm disabled, this guy's disabled. So now this impossibility that I've always thought about is now possible. And that's when it started, beating around in my head that, maybe with my vast wrestling knowledge and all these autobiographies I'm reading about guys sleeping in their car and finding these undercover wrestling schools and stuff, maybe I can find one in my area and start this ridiculous journey. So, and of course, when I told my dad that I wanted to start lifting weights and try to be a wrestler, he laughed at me. So it's like, even more ridiculous than just being made fun of at school. Now I have my dad laughing at me and thinking it's a joke. And, eventually he gave in, bought me a weight bench, and I started lifting 10 pounds and whatever the bar was. So maybe 30 pounds tops because it was a cheap Kmart bench. And I think the dream just kind of grew from there. By 18, I found Cleveland All Pro Wrestling in Cleveland. Yeah. I started going to the shows. I was still kind of scared to sign up for training, doubting myself, questioning myself. But at one point, I communicated early on with JT Lightning, who was the trainer at the school. And I remember there was a flyer that said Cleveland All Pro Wrestling Hotline, right? And it's just like it's just a 216 number. Okay. So the Cleveland area code. And I call it, and I remember a woman answered the phone and she goes, hello. And I could hear a baby crying in the background. I go, hi, yeah, is this the Cleveland All Pro Wrestling Hotline? And she just goes, hold on one second. And then she puts JT on the phone, and JT just starts like doing the sales pitch. And I tell him like my stats and my disability. And I think I went into the call going, well, I'm going to ask him how I could be a wrestler. And then I ended up saying, just doubting myself. By the end of the rambling, I go, how can I be a manager? And he goes, let me ask you something, dude. Is wrestling in your heart? And going forward, my future with JT, he was always a dick. But in this one pivotal moment in my life, he said this sentence. He asked me this question that it tugged on my heartstrings. It choked me up. And I took a deep breath and I just said, yeah, wrestling's in my heart. He said, then come to my school and sign up and just give it a shot and blah, blah, blah. And eventually, I went into this dingy basement in, it was like an abandoned elementary school. Essentially, they would run shows there, and like the building is still there. They don't run wrestling shows at the moment until the next, person buys the building and decides we should run wrestling here again. But you would never guess, looking at the outside of the building and the area that it's in. But like by that point, some of the best wrestlers in the world had wrestled in this shitty, ran down elementary school. I'm talking AJ Styles, Raven, Harley Race, CM Punk, Cole Cabana, Nigel McGuinness, Alex Shelley. This is before I even sign up. So then going forward, you got more guys being created out of that school, and more guys are coming into that building in wrestling. So that's kind of where it all started for me. That's my rambling, Robbie.
I love that. And, now I want to ask you about specifically when you sign up. Now, are you signing up for this school completely alone, or did you go into it already like knowing Johnny Gargano, or how did that work with your friendship?
I was all by myself. So the first time I actually went to the school to try to sign up, and I almost took it as a sign of like, well, this isn't meant to be. It was wintertime, and I was still in high school. And I show up, I knock on the door, and there's this guy who he was the cleaner of the building, and everyone called him Igor because he just looked like a horror movie character. Like if it would have been nighttime outside and like thunder, like and him looking like I don't know, like literally, like I mean, this is insulting, obviously, but like this is what he looked like. He looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, and so like he answers the door. He's like, "How can I help you?" And I was like, "I'm here for wrestling training." He's like, "They didn't show up today, so just come back another day." And I was like, okay. And then I didn't come back for weeks because I was just like, fuck this. I'm not going back to this place. And obviously I eventually did. But like my best friend from high school ended up driving me because I didn't have a car at that point. And then fast forward, I was going to college for a couple semesters. My car breaks down. And so I don't know. I feel like as humans, we're always looking for signs to do the things that we want to do. So for me, I was already like thinking about how much I hated college and like how I hated the idea that like, because I was going for communications, which is a lame degree anyways. And it's like, I hated the idea that I needed a piece of paper to tell me that I could do this stuff. Like, obviously I want to learn those things and get better at it. But like also the communication degree comes with like, well, I have to take advanced math and I'm horrible at math. And I have to take this and like all these things that are not going to be requirements for me to become an announcer or a writer. And so it was frustrating. My car broke down. It was easier for me to transport myself via bicycle to the wrestling school. And I knew no one. The first time I met Johnny actually was before I signed up to the school because I got my foot in the door selling tickets for JT. So I was doing that for a few months, and Absolute Intense Wrestling in Cleveland had just started. And they let me be a quote unquote security guard. So at the time they ran a venue called Peabody's. It was a big concert club down in Cleveland. I think it's closed now actually, but as security, they would just have like these 18, 19-year-old aspiring wrestlers just kind of stand around the ring in AIW shirts and just kind of do crowd control. And the first time I met Johnny was just, introducing myself, shaking my hand as just some kid trying to get into business. And then when I actually entered the school, my second training session, Johnny and a kid by the name of Action Dan Spade were the only two people that showed up that day. And so Johnny was in charge of class. Now, mind you, Johnny is like 10 months younger than me. So at the time he was 18 years old and he was already, teaching people in the school. Now, I don't know if Johnny in retrospect was ready to be teaching, but he was far beyond most people that would do beginners wrestling training. Like he had the chain wrestling down. He was a big Johnny Saint fan. At that point, I think he had already wrestled Alex Shelley and Nigel. I think he wrestled both Machine Guns at that point. It doesn't matter. I just know that he was way better than your average 18-year-old kid. But we grew up in the same neighborhood, and I think we bonded over that pretty quickly. And a lot of the times, the only people that would end up showing up to class would be me and Johnny. Like other times it would be like maybe me, Johnny, and Matthew Justice, who's gone on to do stuff in GCW and beyond. Benjamin Boone, who's still around doing the thing. He's an extra in WWE like every week somehow. I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know why he doesn't have some sort of job behind the scenes there. But oftentimes it was like a combination of like the four of us. Like maybe sometimes you insert one more that would be in training, but a lot of the times it would just be me and Johnny sitting in this cold, damp, dirty ring in the basement of Turner's Hall and just like bonding. And, he was my trainer, quote unquote, but like, we were learning on the job. We were teaching each other, we were just trying things that we saw on TV. And the one thing that he really helped me with was more than anything was just psychology and understanding that I didn't need to keep up with him move for move, which is what I wanted to do from the get-go because I'm very competitive. And he just kind of like reminded me that, even though I like Shawn Michaels and Jericho and Ray, some of the athletic things I might not be able to do, but my favorite wrestler is Hulk Hogan. And if I can focus on doing the moves that I do well, the few moves that I do well, and then worry about the storytelling and the in-between, like the little things that Jericho does or Shawn Michaels does, and I incorporate those in my own way, and then I can become my own guy. And so, obviously wrestling was the thing we bonded over most, but then, I don't know about you, but when you're becoming an adult man, people I know in my life would be like, oh, you can't watch cartoons anymore and you can't like this and you can't like that. And then, the thing with Johnny, like he unabashedly was like, I love Ninja Turtles and I love Power Rangers and I love this and this. And I'm like, oh, I love all those things too. And I just try not to tell anybody. So it's like, we just bonded all over this like nerd stuff that we grew up loving and watching. And, just, for that first 7 years, for sure, like we were pretty much inseparable. And he's still, like my brother, but I mean, like I lived with him and we trained together, we lifted together. It's probably one of the best times of my life is just learning from Johnny and growing closer with Johnny and his family.
That's awesome too. And I got to say, whenever I do, the WWE extra work and all that stuff, and I see Johnny, he's always super nice. One of the friendliest guys out there. And you can tell that he came from the indies, if that makes sense, because a lot of the guys back there, aren't as quick to shake everybody's hand and introduce and stuff like that. And I feel like that's a very, very indie thing. And he still does it, which I always found really cool. And just to segue into how you said, the nerd stuff, the Ninja Turtles and all that stuff, I wanted to point out to our listeners who maybe haven't met you or haven't been to a live show that you're on, you always have the greatest t-shirts. And it's and it's all that stuff. Like you'll walk in with like the coolest Ninja Turtle shirt, and I'm like, where did you get that? It's always the first. It's always the first thing I say to you is, I love that shirt. Did you ever notice that?
I listen, man. There's so many people that compliment me on the shirts, and I consciously realized that over the years I've become like the t-shirt guy, the cool shirt guy, and I've tried to be a little bit more cost efficient about it because for a while in my 20s, like. I went really vintage shirt crazy before everybody else was doing it because it was just one of my weird things where, growing up, my mom was a drug addict, right? And so when I would get toys, she would eventually just sell them very quickly for crack. And if I got like shirts or whatever, clothes, like just things that I like held dear in those moments, she would take away from me, right? So I've never talked to a therapist about it, but I feel like there's so many things that I've been bringing up recently to my girlfriend. She was like, have you ever thought about therapy? I'm like, I'm not opposed to it, but like, I like trying to like dissect these things with my friends and figuring them out. And she's like, maybe you need like a neutral third party. And so, like my thing is like, once I started getting a little bit of money through my jobs, and like I was able to get a credit card, I was like, oh man, like here's how it started. Johnny Gargano was like one of the hardest person to buy a gift for. Okay. So, and unlike me, anything that he wanted wrestling related as a kid, he got. And the best part, his mom didn't sell it for crack. So he had all this cool stuff from his childhood. Right. And, but the one thing that he never got, there were two things. One was the Shawn Michaels 1996 commemorative plaque when he won the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 12. Okay.
I remember those. Yeah.
And he wanted one of those with a tiny piece of the mat from WrestleMania 12, but very specifically, he wanted it to be one of the parts of the lettering in the mat. He didn't want it just to be some random corner piece. Okay. Somehow, a couple years into our friendship, he found someone that was selling it. I don't think on eBay, and it definitely wasn't Marketplace, but somehow he found someone locally on the internet that was selling it and paid maybe $100 for it. So he still has that WrestleMania 12 plaque. But the other thing that he never got was around that time, they came out with 4 jean jackets with like Shawn Michaels, Diesel, Brett, and Undertaker. Okay.
Yeah.
He never got the Shawn Michaels jean jacket. And I'm pretty positive it also says like WrestleMania 12. So I think it's specifically WrestleMania 12. Regardless, he had a birthday coming up. And I went to eBay and now I have a credit card. So I'm like, I wonder if I could find one of these jean jackets. And I found it. But not only did I just find the jacket, because I was just going to buy it so he could have it. I didn't expect to find it in his size, but I found it in a medium. So I'm like, not only can I get him this jacket, but he can wear it. And at the time, I paid $110 for it. Okay. Which now there's no way you're going to get that jacket for $110.
No.
So I bought it for him, and I will never, ever, ever forget him opening that gift and being like, Shawn Michaels jean jacket. Like, he was so happy. I will never see him happier for something that I presented to him in that moment. It was the best feeling. And so once I did that, I realized, wait a minute. Like, I never had like an official Hulk Rules tank top as a kid. And I never had this shirt as a kid. Or I never had that shirt. And I said, I wonder if I could find this on eBay. So I'm like going on eBay like all the time. And I'm like, and I get this horrible eBay addiction and start buying all this like vintage wrestling shit that I never got as a kid or that my mom took away as a kid. And it definitely cost me my relationship in my 20s. We were together for 5 years, and she always wanted me to save money. And as a wrestler, sometimes that in itself is very difficult, right? But I'm self-aware enough to know that, looking back now in those moments, like, what an asshole I was with her. Like, I hope she's doing great, but like, she'd be like, I just need you to save a few $100 every month. And I'm like, the problem is, Mary, like, my car keeps breaking down and blah, blah, blah. And so like, then there'd be a month where the car doesn't break down. I'm like, Mary, check out this shirt I bought for $150. And she'd be like, oh my God, like, you're such an idiot. And so it's no wonder that we broke up. But that's how it started. But over time, you live, you learn, and I've become really good at finding a good deal, not overpaying, but also because of my experience in the vintage wrestling community, I'm really good at buying and reselling vintage items. And I've made quite the pretty penny over the last few years on buying and selling stuff. And my addiction isn't as bad as it once was. Right now, I'm going through my brother could attest to it because we live together. I'm going through a WWE Elite and more so an Ultimate toy collection phase. Like, he had a few of them. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh man, I want a few of those. And then I bought many more than him. And it's becoming a real problem again, but it's never going to be as bad as this eBay problem back in the 2010s. I promise.
It's funny that you say that though. Cause like I have a similar addiction to buying t-shirts, and mine are always 80s hair metal shirts. I know that's really shocking.
No, wow.
And the other one is I buy like old TV show shirts that are like I Love Lucy, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie.
Okay.
Those are my favorite TV shows, Munsters, like stuff like that from back then. So I feel like the only person that would really appreciate that part of my addiction would be RJ City. But
yes, for sure. Like it's funny because like he can relate to you on a 80s, 90s kids level, but he then will also throw out all these obscure wrestlers or references where I would just be like, dude, I literally don't know what you're talking about. You're gonna have to explain that. And he'll lay it out for you. But like he's a different breed of human, but he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life.
Oh, for sure. And I go back and forth with him sometimes on Twitter, like, when are you going to start doing shows from like the Regal Beagle and stuff like that? And I really don't think anybody knows what I'm talking about but him. So it just works out.
I love it.
But yeah, so it's funny that you have that addiction. Like I said, mine's similar, but I just have those two avenues, and some horror movie shirts, of course, too. Because
do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite vintage shirt?
Actually, one that just came in the mail today is my new I Dream of Jeannie shirt, which I'm already in love with. Like, it looked really cool online, but when it got here, it was like, this is perfect because it still looks like something that me dressing like my 80s rock star self would wear, even though it's an I Dream of Jeannie shirt. It's just got her eyes on it, and it says it in like pink letters, all fancy. And I'm like, this is cool.
And is it vintage, or is it like one of those companies just making like newer versions of cool old shows?
Yeah, they're reprints or just like their own like spin on those shows now, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there's so many creative artists out there just recreating stuff that we grew up on. That I wish I was that talented. Like there's a lot of bootleg guys that I get my shirts off of. Like this shirt, this company was one of the first shirt places on the internet that I found that was making like creative like stuff that just like you couldn't find at Hot Topic or anything like this. This was Pizza Party Printing. They just
they just decided to close down for whatever reason. And so I bought this I Ain't Afraid of No Butts shirt with Slimer licking a butthole. That's, very classy. Yeah, man, people are crazy. Like between the shirts and like custom toys. But I will say though, like being so heavily into the vintage shirt community,
Mhm.
there's people that are so great that are making the what looks like the exact vintage shirt, and I could get away with paying the $30 and never having to find the vintage shirt. But
Yeah.
there's something inside of me where it's like, perhaps maybe I could fool Robbie and he'll think this is vintage, but like I know that it's not vintage, and like that just kills me inside. So like there's been a couple that I've bought that aren't true vintage because I'm just like, it's probably best not to spend the $250 on this shirt and just spend 30. But yeah, man, people are super creative and I love it. It's a great time to be alive.
I agree. And it's funny too, because there are certain shirts though where you do have to get the original one. So for me, I collect Shawn Michaels shirts from over the years because he's my guy.
Yeah.
And I have one from 96 that I never got as a kid that I was dying to have, but it couldn't be the reprint. I had to have the one from 96.
Which one?
He's on it doing his usual Shawn Michaels pose. You can see his dangly earrings, and it's got the hearts all over it, and it says Shawn in like the squiggly writing all over it, Shawn Michaels, and the back has the old WWF logo in blue, and it looks like it's shiny,
Okay, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yep.
And I could not find that shirt for the life of me. When I finally found it on eBay, yes, I paid a pretty penny for it, but I was like, this is the shirt from then. I needed the logo in the back. The tag had to say that it was the original one.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. So I totally get where you're going with some of those.
There's just something about a vintage shirt too, where it's like, you can't just make a shirt the way a vintage shirt feels. Like it's been washed so many times and it's like so thin and shitty and it feels like it's going to fall apart any second.
Yes.
But like it's still wearable somehow, and it's just like you can't recreate that. That's the only thing modern man hasn't thought of yet. How do you make a shirt feel like it's 30 years old? Someone tell me the secret, and then I'll buy your shirts all the time.
Right. And they try to pass them off too. You get the ones that'll say like, pre-washed and, worn feel or something like that. And then you get it and you're like, no, it's not.
It's not the same. And also, the one shirts that don't get like that are those late 90s, early 2000s wrestling shirts, because like, I don't know what they were making the shirts out of, like maybe a brick type material, but like they're so heavy. And like there's so many of those that like I have, and I'll bust them out if there's like an occasion, but like they're not conducive for weekly wear just because they're so thick. And then also for whatever they were using to print it, like if you wash it so many times, the lettering starts to crack. Like I'm okay with faded lettering, but like cracking lettering and like it just looks, I don't know, it's not as good as like the fade. I'm getting really dorky about vintage shirts right now, and I apologize.
No, I totally get it. And another friend of mine who's on the show a few times, Mike Fitz from the band Bad Marriage, is a vintage shirt collector as well, and he does all the old 70s and 80s tour T-shirts. And he'll tell you the exact same thing that we're saying. Like there's just something about the vintage shirt, and I agree with what you just said because I had the Road Dog Roll the Dog a Bone shirt from that era that you were just talking about.
Yeah,
and it literally just cracked and cracked and cracked until I pulled it out of the wash one day and it was just filled with holes. Like they just crack until they just shred. It's it's the weirdest thing. And I loved that shirt. I wore it to death.
Yeah. I had, back when you could still find shirts at a thrift store and people didn't know what they had. Like some of my favorite finds at a thrift store were like, back in the day, I found like a WrestleMania 1 shirt that I still have for like $1. I have a TNA shirt, and I'm talking like, I mean, it got bad on eBay when I could get a credit card, but like, I mean, I was in the vintage game when I was like 16 going to the thrift store because I got like an NWA TNA shirt, and this was like, at this point, it was like 2004 that I found it in the thrift store, so I was super pumped. I had a Road Dog shirt. It was the Doing It in the Doghouse shirt.
Yeah, I remember that one.
and the other one that I know for sure I got at the thrift store that I still wear to this day, WWF reprinted it recently, but they did it without the middle finger. It's the classic and I feel a very underrated Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt that he wears when he's arrested after jumping off of the Zamboni onto Vince, where he's like, I ain't through with you yet, Vince, I ain't through now yet by a long shot. And it's like it's got the blue font and, he's the skeleton with the middle finger, and it says not bad to the bones. I mean, that's how you're supposed to say it, but on the back it says bad to the bonds.
Yeah.
BONZ, bonds, bad to the bonds. So, all right. No more shirts. I'm done. I promise.
I mean, could I just say how great that impression was of Stone Cold? That was really good.
It is one of my better impressions, so I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, since you're doing the impression, I got to bring up you doing the Stone Cold podcast, which I absolutely loved. And I remember listening to it. I can't remember what year it was now, but I then saw you in UPW locker room, and I went and told you how much I love listening to it. And, your story was just so inspiring. And that had to be such an amazing experience for you to be asked to be on the Stone Cold. What is it called now? It's not the Stone Cold Truth, is it? Or is it just
the Steve Austin show? And he doesn't technically even do it anymore. It's just greatest hits every week. I don't even know why he stopped doing it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that had to be an amazing experience for you to be asked to be on that show.
An incredible life experience. So I wasn't asked necessarily. It was just agreed upon that I could do it. So basically, to kind of summarize it, you know them very well, Andy and Pepper, Butcher and the Blade. They ended up doing the Steve Austin show with Cherry Bomb, Allie, Bunny, whatever you want to call her. And they were just rambling. We were at their house in Buffalo, and they were just rambling about how awesome he was and how Steve was just a dude. And, Pepper and Allie went to go do something, and it was just me and Andy. And Andy was like, dude, if you were ever in LA, I would try to get you on the Steve Austin show, because the guy that does it, Sean, he's awesome. And he's from Buffalo. So he's super cool. And coincidentally, I was going to be in LA the next month for the first time ever, because Candice LeRae helped hook it up. And I told Andy that, and he was like, all right, I'll hit up Sean about it. And it's one of those things where you're not going to believe it's a real thing until it actually happens, to the point where Sean from the podcast started contacting me. And then I was going to be in LA for 2 days. And on the first day, I was supposed to get a call from Steve, because he just wanted to run through just, whatever we were going to talk about on the show, if there was anything specific I wanted to talk about or whatever. And I remember it was the day before, and I was already told to reach out to him and text him, just introduce myself. And he got back to me within minutes. And then that day, when I was expecting a call, I was with Zach Gowen. We were about to go to the gym. And like an ass, I had said to Gowen the day before, when I got into town, I said, now, just so you know, I've only set it to where one ringtone will go off if Stone Cold Steve Austin calls my phone. You've heard of him, Stone Cold. It will be his theme song. So if you hear the glass, it's my ass that he's trying to call. And so we're literally about to step out of the car and go into the gym, and all of a sudden the glass shatters, and I look at my phone, and I look at Zach, and I look at my phone, and I show him the phone. I'm like, oh my God, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I answer the phone, and it's like a 1 minute conversation. Like, how you doing, kid? I'm good. How are you, Steve? What do you want to talk about tomorrow? And I'm like, well, just, wrestling stuff. And I'm really trying to do this motivational speaking thing. So he's like, all right, sounds good. Well, I'll see you tomorrow at 3:00. And I was like, all right, sounds good, Steve. And then I was like, what the fuck? I just talked to Stone Cold on the phone. And then I was real nervous going to his house. And I remember, as I'm in the Uber, Candice texts me, and she's like, which I didn't know that I needed until I got the text. But she said, hey, no matter what happens today, take everything in, because you're going to be sitting with Stone Cold and doing his podcast. So just really appreciate what you're doing today. And I was like, you know what? Okay. And because I was really nervous, because it's, I've done shows with lesser names that were in the WWE, and I'm just like, I don't want to bother this guy. If I shake his hands, he's going to be an ass to me. And I just remember pulling up, and Stone Cold was in mismatched camo, which I immediately was like, what the? He was wearing blue camo shorts with like just like a green top. And I was like, that's weird. And he's wearing like New Balance shoes, and he sees the car and the windows rolled down. He sees me, and he just like, he's looking at his phone, and then he like puts one finger up in the air, and I'm just like, oh my, this guy's just a dude. Like, I don't know why. Like, it just seemed like right from the get go. Like I in a way, I've always known Steve Austin, but like in talking to him, it just seemed so, it's like we're talking right now. You know what I mean? Like, and we did the podcast and it was so good. He was like, and I had blocked out the whole day. I didn't know how long he was going to need me, but like I had nothing else going on. So we do the first show and it was so good. He's like, well, you got anything else going on today? You want to do another episode of the podcast? Just talk about our favorite matches, tag teams. And I was like, yes, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I would love to do another podcast. Let me just check my schedule. Yep, it's free. And so we did another show that he was going to use for another week. And then the best part of that experience was just like, we probably spent 2 hours doing the podcast, and we chatted a little bit before we started recording, but like for like 3 or 4 hours, we just sat in his studio and just talked. And there were these conscious moments where I'm talking to him and as I'm listening to him talk, one thing that I had to stop myself from doing was like, anytime he went to tell me a story that I've heard in a documentary or seen on a TV show that I knew for sure, like there was that mark in me that wanted to be like, yeah, I know this story, Steve, and here's what happened. But I said, no, Greg, you've never heard this directly from the lips of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so I had to restrain myself and just take it in. And then just like, those moments where I'm like, obviously, growing up, Hulk Hogan was my dude.
Yeah.
But when I became an angsty teenager, I had that Stone Cold Steve Austin mentality. And, like you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to prove you wrong each and every time. And, he was an inspiration of sorts. And so like I had these moments where I'm like talking to him. I'm just like, I can't believe I'm sitting like, 2-3 feet away from Stone Cold. And, after we were done chatting in his house, like I was waiting for my Uber. He's like, why don't you come in my house for a little bit, And so I went inside his house and met his wife and played with his dogs a little bit. And his house is like much more humble than what you would expect Stone Cold's house to be for a guy who sold more merch than anybody in wrestling history and stuff. And the one thing that sticks out to me is he had no WWF merch visible in his living room and his kitchen. There's like a hallway. That's as far as I went, except on his kitchen counter, there was a Stone Cold Steve Austin cookie jar. So he had a cookie jar of himself in his kitchen. And the best part of that particular experience in the house was at one point before his wife got home, he's going to take his dog out and he just goes, the Alexa thing, the robot thing was just becoming a thing. And he goes, Alexa, who do you think your favorite wrestler is? And then it just goes, boop, boop. I think my favorite wrestler is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then he looks back at me and he goes, I didn't tell her to say that. That's just what she thinks. And I was like, what's happening right now? Why is this a real thing? And so, I went home that night and I've said this before and I'll say it again. Like it felt like a great first date. And I was thinking like, well, how many days do I wait to text this guy? Like, let him know like, hey, I really enjoyed our time together. And before I went to sleep in my hotel room, Steve shot me a text and he said like, hey man, really great meeting you today. I loved hearing your story. If you ever need anything, don't be afraid to reach out. And, I took that to heart. I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, what a cool dude. I'm going to text this dude and I'm going to call this guy and just shoot the shit with him. And like, it's 5.5 years later since I've done the show. I have so many voicemails from Stone Cold saved on my phone because he's an old man. So like if I don't answer the phone, he will leave a voicemail. Right. So, and as soon as he leaves the voicemail, I immediately forward it to my email to save for all eternity. and then I call him right back, and we've left voicemails back and forth, and I've shared conversations with him where I think one time he called me to talk about having Ricky Shane Page on the show, and we talked 2 minutes about Ricky, and then 45 minutes about Memphis wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's weird, but the coolest thing about that is, for me as a performer, is like, you love entertaining the fans. But for me, who's also like someone who still struggles with imposter syndrome, like you said kind of at the beginning of the podcast, like, you don't understand why I've never been signed. I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with that, but as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate the things that I have done and continue to do. And I don't take those for granted because, JJ Dillon once told me, I know your dream is WWE, but if you never go any farther than you have right at this moment, you're living a dream that most people will only continue to dream about. And so with that being said, it's, to have you bring me on your podcast and put over my match, to have my peers like think that I'm doing a good job, to have someone that I've always looked up to and still idolize, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, to tell me, I don't think there's anything that you really have to work on. I think it's just timing, and to take time out of his life to not only take my phone calls, but to call me, to talk to me, to text me, even if it's just making fun of me. It's surreal. And it's like, it just goes to show you that, like, no matter your situation, if you just try, if you're stupid enough to keep trying and willing to fail a bunch of times, you will find the craziest successes if you just keep moving forward. I think that's really what it's all about.
I think that is the most solid advice you can give to anybody in any kind of entertainment dream pursuit that they have, whether it be music, wrestling, even podcasting. Like, you just saying that is just like, I'm nodding my head along with you every single word you're saying. And you've had, at this point, almost a 20-year career, and you've seen a lot of things change. You've seen a lot of things come and go, a lot of people come and go, and you're still standing here. You're still here doing this thing. So my original question was going to be for the advice, but now I'm going to ask you, what are the biggest differences that you yourself have seen in the last almost 20 years on the independent wrestling scene?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. I'll tell you what's the same. Mm-hmm. Guys who fall into the trap of getting stuck in their respective city's bubble. I think that's a big issue. Like, guys who like enter wrestling with the idea of, like, they care about what their theme song is. Mm-hmm. And they picture that moment where they like hold a championship belt above their head while standing on the top rope. Right. Mm-hmm. But sometimes what they don't think about is, like, what happens in the ring besides, like, maybe the two moves in your head that you visualize that you would do if you were a wrestler. They don't think about the work that goes into that part. They don't think about the sacrifices you have to make. If you are not, even if you're trying to make it, like, if your goal is to just do this on the weekends, that's great. But most guys are not realistic, and they don't want to admit that. Like, there are too many guys in wrestling that aren't true to themselves or to other people, and they get into wrestling so that, they lack in some other areas in their life. So when people ask them, what do you do for work? They go, I'm a professional wrestler. And, they fail to mention that they are making maybe $10 if they're lucky. They don't leave their respective city. Oh yeah, by the way, their actual job is they work at Home Depot. Like, they're not going to mention that part. You know what I mean? So It's like, sometimes I think people do that to justify, what they might feel is an otherwise meaningless existence. I think, as long as you're true to yourself and, like, what your goals are, and if you even have goals, like, I think that's, that sets you alone from the pack. Like, the long drives, the sleeping in your car, like, those are things that, like, literally I will still do. Like, I've done them, and I'm in a position where, like, yeah, I get flights, I get hotels, but, like, I had a show that I was going to do Friday in upstate New York, which I don't even want to talk about because it got canceled when I was 30 minutes away from New York. Okay. And so I had to be in Canada the next day. Didn't want to bother anybody. I was like, Greg from 10 years ago would have been very upset. But But you know what? I went, got some food, went and worked out. And then I saved myself $60 by not paying a hotel. And I just warmed up my car, took my neck pillow, slept in my car because I had to be in Canada the next day. So there's no point of driving the 3.5 hours back to Cleveland.
Mhm.
And I got up early, went to the gym again, and drove to Canada and did my wrestling show. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to understand that like being a wrestler is going to take sacrifice. So that's my rambling about things that haven't changed. Like there's too many shitbags that still just want things handed to them.
Agreed.
But what has changed, and I think like this is the positive part of this conversation here. When I entered wrestling in 2006, it was a lot harder to promote yourself. We're just getting out of that era where you have to send VHS tapes and DVDs out to places if you want to get booked.
Mhm.
Social media is becoming a thing, right? So the era we live in now is if you have the right mindset, if you treat wrestling like a business, and if you get a proper education in wrestling, which means taking the time to not just give anybody your money, find a trainer that is reputable and has like legitimate people that they've trained under their belt, and you put in the time to social media and marketing yourself online and doing those drives, like I think you have a better chance of making it. You have so many tools at your disposal in this little phone thing. Like you don't even need a computer. Just use your phone and you can send YouTube clips to promoters and write a professional email to someone and send it out and make a promo that isn't in your car unless that's your gimmick for some reason. And like buy some lights, and because lighting, podcast equipment, like all this stuff is very affordable if you know how to use the resources that you have. And I think the way that we're able to market ourselves and be seen as performers has changed greatly. Like, you know, you used to have to depend on maybe someone will buy a DVD and see my work, but then YouTube becomes a thing. IWTV is a thing. So here's this streaming service that you can get on literally any smart device now that people can invest in. And like, you know, I've heard the figures about IWTV and how many people are subscribed to it. And it's in the thousands, like the over the tens of thousands of people are watching IWTV, not every show, but I know they have a lot of subscribers. So like that's another platform as a performer that we didn't have in 2006 that I just think like hopefully the wrestlers coming up today understand the opportunities they have. And like, not that it's incredibly easy, but it's making it a lot more attainable to be your own best self promoter. And I think that's, you know, technology has been the biggest change. And I think it's been for the better. I mean, with the exception of Twitter, I think Twitter is, I stay off of Twitter anymore. I barely post any tweets. It's just a cesspool, man. Like it's real bad. It's just negativity. And I think once Elon Musk got a hold of it and he wanted people to pay to be verified, I was like, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
So.
I don't think you're alone in that either. I've seen Twitter take a huge dip since all of that. Now, I have one more wrestling related question for you, and then we'll do a quick lightning round and we'll get you on your way because I don't want to take up your whole night here. But with a 20-year career, do you still have guys that you have like on a short list of, oh, I want to face that guy in some kind of capacity that you've never stood across from? Or,
you know, there's always been one specific name that comes to mind when I'm asked this, and it's because I've grown to become friends with him over the years, and I think we have a lot of really silly, weird stuff in common. And when I say silly and weird, and then I name Paul London, it shouldn't be a shocker to anybody who knows him. But I mean, I would really love to wrestle Paul London. But you know, it's strange. Other than like when I started with like. Matt Cross was like one of my first favorite indie wrestlers, Matt Cross and Josh Prohibition. That's because, you know, after I saw them in the backyard wrestling game, I found out they were from Cleveland. And so it was one of those things, much like Zach Allen, seeing somebody that I could relate to with a disability, you know, at the time I was coming up as a performer, the only guy that was even from Ohio that was of any importance was Al Snow. And he was from Lima, Ohio, some small town that's like 3 hours from me. But also on a side note, Al Snow is a dickhead. And I'll say that in every interview that I do, but I'm not going to talk about Al Snow. I'm going to talk about positive things. M-Dog and Josh were real inspirations. Like when I got into wrestling, I'd like to wrestle those guys. I'd like to wrestle Zach Gallen. It's weird. I don't know if I've ever had a list of guys that I want to wrestle. I guess I don't realize it until I'm put in those situations. Like I don't think I ever like dreamed of wrestling Chris Masters, right? But I wrestled him a few months back in ESW in a scramble match, and so giving, so down to earth. And then it becomes one of those things you're like, well, I'd wrestle that guy every day. Like, you know what I mean? And so like, I'm just so incredibly humbled and thankful that my body has held up, knock on wood, as good as it has. And I don't really have the aches and pains that I feel like guys that are 37 years old or around my age have. Like I had one, never broken a bone that I know of. I think I might have fractured my ankle once, but I never went to the doctor because I'm a dumb wrestler. And I literally just kept wrestling for like 6 to 8 months on it. Like literally, I wrestled for Gabe at Dragon Gate. I got pulled out of the ring by Silas Young because Michael Facade was in this scramble, and Facade did not understand the concept of timing. I love Facade, but I still question whether he's grasped the concept of timing. And so his spot was going longer than it should have. Silas Young pulled me out of the ring. And when he did, because it was just impromptu, like, let's get Greg out of here, my ankle just went underneath me and it like cracked against the ground. And not only did I have to finish this match and jump off the top rope with a crossbody onto Silas, which was incredibly painful, I had to go back onto the regular show. This was the pre-show. I had to go back on their main show to wrestle Brody Lee in an open challenge. And I almost didn't do it because I was hurting so bad, but I wanted to wrestle Brody. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back out there. Wow. It's my body is okay. Like I once partially tore my labrum, which required physical therapy, no surgery, thankfully, because this is my good arm. If I mess this up, I'm going to have someone wipe my ass for a number of weeks, and I don't want to put anybody in that situation. And man, like I feel good, and I feel like mentally, and I think that's more important. I'm more mentally healthy than I've been in a long time, but that also comes with balance, prioritizing things better. And as much as I love wrestling and will always love wrestling, and it is my first love, and it has consumed my life a little bit more than usual, but in a different way. Like as a fan, like wrestling has been so fun to watch the past couple years, especially with changes in WWE. Like it's just, I try not to let it consume every aspect of my life. And I think like, in my 20s and probably my early 30s too, it's like everything was wrestling. But you got to surround yourself with a positive support system, and you have to realize that, ironically, Stone Cold told me this when I was at his house and like questioning whether I could do motivational speaking in a very heart-to-heart conversation. He basically shared a story with me about Paul Orndorff pulling him aside when he was doing a bunch of dumb shit. And Paul Orndorff said to Steve, kid, there's more to life than wrestling. And so then Steve said to me, so I don't know if it means anything coming from me, because I know when Paul said it to me, if anybody else would have said it, I don't know if it would have resonated. But I want to tell you, there's more to life than wrestling. And I don't know if that would have resonated with anybody else. But in that weird life moment where I'm sitting in Stone Cold's house and he said that to me, I really feel like that's where things kind of started to shift for me, where I was just like, man, like there are other things that I like and that I could focus on, and maybe it'll be better for me mentally. And I'm just very thankful for the people in my life and the experiences that I've had as a wrestler. And past couple of years, I've been questioning my future as an active performer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I like talking. Obviously, we're doing this podcast. I did my own podcast for a long time. I'm probably going to be bringing it back in the next couple months. I'm still doing stuff for Patreon, but I think I would love to, the artist in me would love to do stuff behind the scenes, because I think if you truly love wrestling, you don't need the spotlight on you. And I
Yeah.
think if you're a good wrestler, you realize at some point that, and this goes for like life, man, like so many elements of wrestling are comparable to life. Like it is much better to give than to receive. And it's like, if I can contribute, if I can throw out some advice to someone or come up with an idea for someone, if I could take myself and put myself in multiple characters' boots and say, like, what would I do if I was this person in this moment? Like, what's a good idea for the spot here for this person? What could enhance this character? If I could do that and contribute in that way and make a couple bucks, I'd be golden. You know what I mean? So but no matter what happens, you got to be happy with who you are and where you're at in life. And, what you've done. And if there's more things that you want to do for anybody that's listening, it's like I said, just keep going. Cause sometimes you could be your own worst enemy. Like, don't let anybody tell you that you can't be whatever it is you want to be. Just go do it.
I love that. And I want to end the wrestling discussion on that before anything, because I think so many times throughout an indie wrestler's career, you hear like, you have to sacrifice everything. You have to only think about wrestling, only watch wrestling, eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling. And it gets so overwhelming that it chases guys out of the business. But, at the Buffalo Wrestling Academy, as one of the coaches, like I tend to lean towards what you just said. So I'm so glad that you brought that up and you could have other things that you love and you could have a life and you can have things outside of it because that's how you stay sane.
Yeah, you will go crazy. I know firsthand. You will drive yourself crazy if you're like the be all end all is being a wrestling millionaire. For me, it wasn't even being a millionaire. It's just like, I've always had this chip on my shoulder. It's like I want to prove people wrong. Like I want to get to this specific place, and if I don't get there, then I fail. Like you define what success and failure is.
Right.
Like some people are. There's a lot of strength in I am, and so many people are quick to go, I am stupid, I am a failure. But I think more people need to take the time to look at what they do with their life and what they have in life and say, I am strong enough, I am good enough, I am brave enough, and I am still moving forward. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I love that. I really love that. Well, on that note, we'll stray away from wrestling here. We're going to do a quick lightning round, which just something that we like to do with some of our guests, just so people could get to know you on a different level with a bunch of questions that don't matter at all. So the first question is going to be New York or Chicago style pizza?
Well, you know what? I don't think I've ever had New York style pizza. I feel like I've definitely had a lot of deep dish Chicago pizza. But if do I have to pick one? Because I'd rather have a Little Caesars stuffed crust pretzel pizza.
Isn't that like the most underrated thing ever? Is Little Caesars, like for real?
So here's my thing. If you're gonna get a basic Little Caesars pizza, yeah, maybe it's not that great. But if you get the extra most bestest stuffed crust, I think that's a good choice. If you have the ability and it's in your area to get the extra most bestest stuffed crust pretzel pizza, I think that is incredible. Like every 2 weeks for a cheat meal, I'm eating one of those, and my girlfriend is always going like after she watches me eat a whole pizza and fries and wings, she and wonders how a 5'4" man who's 140 pounds consumes all that. She goes, yeah, when's the last time you checked your cholesterol? And I go, never. I'm super healthy. And she's like, maybe you should. So yeah, that's where I'm at in my life.
That's a great answer. Never. I'm super healthy.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. You're going through the Bermuda Triangle. Are you taking a plane or a boat?
Oh God, I'm getting lost either way, right? Probably. What kind of boat?
I just said a boat. I didn't specify. Could be a cruise ship. Could be a speedboat. Whatever you think.
If they bring back the Bruise Cruise, I'll take the boat. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm kind of used to planes at this point, so I'll take a plane and just count my lucky stars, I guess.
All right. How about favorite TV show of all time?
Oh God. So this goes back to my traumatic childhood that I should probably talk to a therapist about. I don't know if these would qualify as favorite. I will say that arguably the best show of all time is probably Breaking Bad. So I guess that would probably rank up there as one of my all-time favorite shows. But I have a lot of childhood favorites. again, I wouldn't say this is my favorite, but this is how me and my girl Hannah got onto this subject recently, because I was like, I started watching X-Men '97, and I don't know what it was, but like I was just listening to the theme song and watching the intro, and I was like, am I about to cry right now? Like, why am I about to cry watching X-Men? And I started, so then I made it so much bigger than perhaps maybe even I understood him. And she's like, why were you about to cry to the X-Men theme? I was like, I think because like I don't know, it was one of those things I watched on Saturday morning when like my parents were like physically beating the shit out of each other, and I could just go in the other room and watch X-Men, and like that song just brought me back, and I just thought about like how, wow, what an escape this cartoon was for me. She's like, yeah, again, have you thought about therapy? I don't know if that's a thing that maybe you want to look into, or but also like I've had the same feeling watching again, every people are just never going to listen to your podcast again after I say this, or they're never going to want me on the show. Um, I loved Full House as a kid, and like when Fuller House came out, literally, Robbie, I'm not shitting you. I would take off from my real job. I would not take any bookings on that Friday that the season would drop, and I would just binge watch the whole season of Fuller House. And this happened like I think there was 5 seasons, so 5 years straight. And then I would immediately text Cherry Bomb because she was also watching Fuller House. I'm like, can't believe this just happened with Uncle Jesse. Like, oh my god! And the show wasn't even that great. It wasn't even that great. All right, so like, I'm a very pathetic man.
Listen, I watched all 5 seasons of that as well.
All right.
I didn't take it to the extreme of taking off and binge watching them all in one day, but I did watch all 5 seasons of it because I also loved Full House. So I can't say anything about that. And I will say this. My girlfriend recently got me into Breaking Bad, and we've been binge watching it for the first time for me. It's a third time for her. And we're just about through the last season right now, and my mind is blown. Like every time something happens, I'm like, well, we have to watch another one.
It's so crazy. It's so I didn't watch it when it was on the air. When it got on Netflix, and it was during a period of time where for a few years I was just specifically wrestling. And I was like, I want something to watch that's not wrestling, right? And so I was like, let me try Breaking Bad. And then what drew me in was like, not only that do you have, the first episode, you got, I'm basically why I never watched it when it was on live, because I'm such an asshole sometimes. I was just like, well, the dad from Malcolm in the Middle, like, I'm not watching this show. Like, who cares?
I said the same thing.
Yeah, and then the son has cerebral palsy, so I'm like, that's weird and different. And then I waited like a week, and then I watched the second episode, and then after episode 2, I was just like, every free second I had to binge watch it as fast as I could, and it was just so good. And then if you end up enjoying this, what it sounds like you will, you got to watch Better Call Saul. It's a lot slower, but Saul Goodman is so great, and like that 5 or 6 seasons of that show, it's just, especially as you get towards the end, like it's a slow start, but man, it's a compelling show for sure.
I actually plan on checking that out, and and I'll never judge anybody for what they like to watch. Like when you were giving me your Fuller House spiel, because you're talking to a guy that for the last 2 weeks, every night before he goes to bed, puts on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So
nothing wrong with that. Hey man, listen. My first exposure to Mary Tyler Moore was her sitting in the front row at WrestleMania 6, and me thinking to myself like, hey, why did Jake the Snake Roberts give this rich woman $100 bill? Like, I like why my family could really use that. So
gave a rich woman $100 bill. That's true.
Yeah, like,
that is true. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. All right. So next question: favorite cartoon of all time?
I love so many, but I mean, like, I think the thing that I lean on the most is Ninja Turtles, man. Like, one time another dramatic story. Like, I love the Ninja Turtles so much that, my mom and dad took me to a mall to meet them. And in retrospect, like, they were probably just like 2 generic turtle costumes. But what I remember about it was like, there was only 2 turtles, and there was no line to meet the turtles. And like, I loved the original movies. I watched the cartoon every week. I really related to Raphael because, I could be very angry at times, and I still have that hothead mentality. all me and my brother wanted was a hug from the Ninja Turtles, but there's no line. There's just like all of these kids and like a lot of little girls, and the Ninja Turtles just keep giving hugs to these little girls. And like me and my brother can't make it through this crowd to give the turtles hugs. And I just remember it felt like we were standing there for an eternity trying to get a hug. And eventually my dad just got mad. He's like, fuck this, we're leaving. And we just left and we didn't get to hug the Ninja Turtles. And I just remember crying the whole way home. And it wasn't until like 2 years later, my uncle took me to this amusement park called Kiddie Park, which still exists today. And, two of the turtles were there. I got my picture with them, and all was right with the world. I made up for that terrible experience at the mall. But I love me some turtles. The Mutant Mayhem movie that just came out, I found that to be the best Turtles release in a long time. I bought all the Mutant Mayhem action figures. Part of me was because Johnny Gargano started buying them, so I was competing with him. So I'm like, if he's going to have all the figures, I have to have all the figures too. And yeah, I think it's got to be Turtles, man. But like anything that was on Fox Kids too, I think like was really incredible around that time. Like, you know, Animaniacs was like really great. Anything on Nickelodeon that didn't involve children being molested or anybody being sexually assaulted. I just watched the documentary about the guy from Ren and Stimpy. Like, I loved Ren and Stimpy. Like, why do you have to be a piece of shit? Like, why are all these people like, I don't even want to say like ruining my childhood, because like, obviously there are victims involved, but it's like, I can't enjoy these things in the same way now because I know the guy behind it's an asshole.
Right. I know. And it does do that too. Same thing with musicians. Like when you hear something about like a musician that you loved growing up and then some crazy story comes out about him, it's like, well, I don't want to listen to that album anymore. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, you know, we're all people and we will make mistakes, right? But that, like, when you're doing things like that, you know what I mean? And you're doing it on a regular basis, you know, it's not a mistake. You know, it's done with intent and with malice, and it's super messed up, man. It's just it's not cool.
Exactly. I agree. And, you know, you could also let your girlfriend know that we are doing therapy right now.
Yes.
This is the All Bets Are Off podcast is actually a therapy session. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. Yes. Good. I don't have to get charged for it. All right.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell the listeners that you were actually more nervous about doing my show than the Stone Cold show, because you were like, hey, you threw the water on Kevin Owens. So
you did do that.
All right. How about a couple more here, and then I'm going to have you plug your stuff and get out of here. Do you prefer horror movies or comedies?
Comedies, but I mean, because I'm not much of a modern horror guy, but I'll watch any comedy. But there are a couple modern horror movies that I really enjoyed. My all-time favorite is Freddy Krueger. I have a giant Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street 5, a cardboard cutout sitting in my living room right now, signed by Robert Englund. Okay, loving that. I've got like pretty much all the NECA Freddy Krueger figures. I think it's one of those things where I was terrified of Freddy as a kid, and when I became literally had reoccurring nightmares that I can remember to this day.
Oh, wow.
Just petrified. And at some point when I was like 12 or 13, a kid from school, like, it was one of those moments where I was like, I want to be brave now. I'm becoming a teenager. I want to try to watch these Freddy Krueger movies. And he had Nightmare on Elm Street 3 on tape. He just gave it to me, and I watched it, and I was like, wait a minute. He's funny. Like, he's really funny. And like, this is like, I don't know, it's like cool. And so it was almost like one of those things where it's like, I conquered my fear of Freddy and I became like totally obsessed with him. But modern horror movies, like, I really enjoyed that X movie that came out a couple years ago. I saw that in the theaters, and that was super cool. And what was that? Black Phone was a great newer horror movie. But yeah, I think I lean towards comedy for sure, or if, like, you know, a mixture of comedy and dark humor. Like, some of my all-time favorite 90s films would be like Addams Family Values, or 80s Beetlejuice, obviously. So it's like I'm all over the place, but there's so many 90s comedies that I grew up on that I could just like quote verbatim, like Wayne's World 1 and 2, and Billy Madison. They're classic. Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, when Adam Sandler was the man. I heard that they're making Happy Gilmore 2. I can't imagine what that looks like, but I hope it doesn't suck if it comes out. But I think one of the more underrated comedies of the 90s was Dirty Work by Norm Macdonald. Like nobody talks about that one. That's such a funny film. And I as time has gone on, I realized growing up as like a Saturday Night Live kid, a lot of my delivery and my humor comes from Norm Macdonald because he was like so sick and twisted.
Yeah.
And as you notice, like I just nonchalantly several times in the show talked about my crackhead mom, like it's like nothing, right? And like obviously there are traumatic things involved with that, but like, you know, having to grow up in front of Norm and see him deliver stuff with like, yeah, she was walking around in public and she was being a what's the term I'm looking for? Oh yeah, huge crack whore and like stuff like that, like that, like that was funny to me. I'm like, that's how I'm going to combat all this trauma. Is like I'm just going to say like these weird things and just also just any chance I have to like make someone feel uncomfortable about my disability or just like my upbringing. Like so many times at my job, I'll just say and do things as bits. And sometimes I'll be the only one that thinks it's funny. And people at work are probably just like, why is this weirdo still here? Like, what is wrong with them? They've probably often thought to themselves, Greg, have you considered therapy?
Well, again, we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
All right. So final lightning round question. And that's going to be, what is your favorite music genre?
As I've gotten older, I've become more of a sad boy. So there's a lot of, I listen to a lot of like acoustic stuff, a lot of like bands like State Champs, Real Friends, like pop punk type music, and definitely 90s 2000 Greg would have made fun of 2024 Greg, but also 2024 Greg was like, dude, you like Limp Bizkit and like Corn and Puddle of Mud. You're like, you fucking idiot. Like, what are you talking about? Which I still love those bands. And that's probably not, the most popular answer, but like, I'm all over the place, man. Like I went to, in middle school, like, I went to school with a lot of Black and Puerto Rican kids. So like, I was in a very ghetto neighborhood. So I grew up around a lot of rap music. So R&B music, I probably know a lot more about rap and R&B than you would imagine that I know. But I think like, I don't know, like I wouldn't say new metal is still my favorite today, but like when I'm at the gym, like 90s and 2000 metal, like it takes me back to a place where I hurt, and I feel bad for anybody that's ever had like a perfect life because, and music is something that anybody can relate to, and it takes you to a time and a place, and sometimes, you just hear music, but depending on where you're at in your life or where you've been in your life, sometimes you can hear that same song and you understand music, right? Yep. And so there are a lot of songs from that new metal, rock, heavy metal genre that like just take me back to a place and a feeling where it drives me, it pushes me, and like whereas in those moments when I would listen to them as a teenager and thought about things like how shitty my life is and like how I didn't have that many friends and stuff, like now that music pushes me to lift a bit heavier, move a little faster, go a little farther, because, I have so many friends. I have so many cool life experiences. And I think most importantly, when I thought that there was no light at the end of the tunnel, I was able to keep crawling through the muck and the darkness. And I got to the light, Yeah. And I don't know, music is like so incredibly important to me. And like, I'm down with any genre and just anything that gives me a feeling. There was a long period of time where one of my first jobs in independent wrestling, when we had a TV show in Cleveland called Pro Wrestling Ohio, it was on Sports Time Ohio. So it was in 4 million homes. I was responsible for finding and acquiring rights to for the music for the show. So essentially, like, again, this is in the era of like MySpace and Facebook is becoming a thing, and it's like I would find these unsigned bands, or I would find bands that I was interested in growing up, and I would see if can I find the person that I have to contact to get rights to the song. And there's a lot of local bands that I feel like I helped out, a lot of unsigned bands that I feel like I got on the show, but also a couple of the more notable songs that we got on the show. Like I got Smile Empty Soul on
Oh,
the show.
wow.
Like we got rights from them. And we used at the time, a brand new track from Nonpoint on the
Oh,
show for one of
wow.
our events. And so like, I feel like I needed to sort of have an ear for how would this work for this video package? Would this
Mhm.
song apply for this video package? Would this work for a good theme song for this person? So, you kind of have to have a wide array of musical taste in
Yeah.
an effort to make that work. But man, music is incredible. And it's probably second to my love of wrestling. And I feel like both musicians and wrestlers go through the same type of things where it's like it's just relatable on all levels. And for a lightning round, I made this incredibly long, and I'm so sorry.
That's okay because your answers are great. And actually
Okay.
my follow-up, genre, obviously I'm the 80s hair metal guy, but new
Yeah,
metal is close by for a lot of the same reasons that you just threw out. And I feel very fortunate that I've gotten to know some of those guys over the years with my own music career and wrestling career, because a lot of them are wrestling fans. And
yeah,
they've been on the show. I've had AC and Virus from Dope on the show and stuff like that. And
that's
it's just
awesome.
it's cool when people appreciate that new metal sound. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
just it
yeah,
goes deeper, and it really defined a generation.
for sure. Yeah, I probably should mention too. Like, there's a lot of music that me and my dad didn't always get along the best, but I think the one thing that I got from him is like some of his musical taste. Cause like, yeah, he was a big like Tom Petty fan,
Oh yeah.
uh, and so like I listened to a lot of Tom Petty, and I love Phil Collins and Genesis because of him, and Aerosmith,
Oh
and,
yeah.
like a lot of 90s alt rock. He like would listen to a lot of Collective Soul and, Manfred Mann, and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to think of Mike and the Mechanics. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
real
yeah.
weird, obscure names. But yeah, man, I love music. But who doesn't, right? You gotta love music.
I always feel bad for people that say I'm not really into music. I'm like, ooh, you must not have a heart.
Yeah, you're operating on a psychotic playing field.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this, but Aerosmith was the first band that signed on for Wayne stock. So.
That is very true. That is very true, man. And listen, Wayne's World 2, obviously not as good as Wayne's World 1, but like still incredible. Like I can't
Yeah.
tell you how often I say I'm just gonna cross the T's and dot the lowercase
J's.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. I know it. And I always have obscure quotes from like Wayne's World 1 and 2, Encino Man,
Yeah.
Airheads, of course.
Yes.
And I actually I don't know if you've watched Airheads, but it's one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah, I love Airheads.
Yeah. I just bought the KPPX Rebel Radio shirt. And
That's awesome.
on the back, it's got the more hair, more flair, yet so debonair.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. And that's that one more thing about the shirts too. Like,
Yeah.
that's the great thing about a t-shirt too. Like it's a way to say something to someone without saying anything. And like if they don't know who you are, you see a t-shirt and like you go like, oh, I know what that's from. And if like what my random ass shirt is from, like we just became best friends.
Yes, 100%. If I was sitting in the locker room at ESW with a Wayne Stock 93 shirt on, you would absolutely know as soon as you walked in.
I 100% would walk up to you and be like, dude, that shirt rules.
Well, you're probably going to see it because I just ordered it. So
thank the good Lord.
All right, man. Listen, I'm so happy that we finally did this. And, I just, you can be on your way from the show now, but I want you to just plug your socials so people who don't already follow you can. And I want you to, if there's any upcoming events that you want to throw out there, throw them out there, just whatever you want. This is your time to just plug whatever.
Well, you can find me on social media. I'm at Gregory Iron on X. I don't do much there, so you probably should find me on Instagram at Gregory_Iron. I'm on Facebook. Just search Gregory Iron. You could check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Iron Wrestling, where if you sign up there, there's a buttload of old audio podcasts that we've done over the course of 4 years with my co-host Aaron Bauer. Aaron McGuire. He has been known by various names. We also do video content there. We've been expanding to YouTube, so you can see those videos first and foremost. If you're on patreon.com/Iron Wrestling, you can also have Zoom chats with me at certain tiers. We do a Zoom chat once a month, and it's a great community, more so than you just being a fan of my work. It's a great way to interact with other wrestling fans that truly love wrestling and probably have the same weird, dark sense of humor that you do, because I have a sick sense of humor myself. So if you get into the podcast and that's your cup of tea, then you're going to get a lot of that. And I don't know offhand what shows I have coming up. I know I have. I don't have much in April, actually, which was kind of by design. I just wanted to kind of take it easy. But in May, I know I'm doing a show for the Murray Ridge Center, which is a center for children and adults with developmental disabilities in the Elyria area. In June, I'm going to be doing something in England. I don't know what exactly yet. I was going there on vacation with my girlfriend to Germany, and there's nothing in Germany that we could find that was running literally the days that I was going to be there. They were running before and after. So I'm going to fly over to England for a couple of days and do some stuff over there. And just you can follow all my shenanigans over on social media, and make sure to just send me a message. I'm pretty good at getting back to messages, except for Facebook Messenger, because I took it off my phone because I was buying too many toys. So,
damage control. You're doing your own damage control.
Yes. It's really bad.
Well, hey, this therapy session was fantastic. And I thank you for joining me, and party on, Wayne.
Party on, Garth.
Once again, rockers, that was Gregory Iron, so please give him a follow on social media, see where he's going to be next, and support, and we will catch you next time on the All Bets Are Off podcast.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.